was living in Paris and I was very into the music scene. So I knew like this label, No Wave, but just like for the music. And once in France at the Museum of Modern Art, you had this retrospective about like No Wave movies. And I knew like this No Wave label just for music, but not for films. So I decided to see, some of the films. And of course I knew Jim Jarmusch and I knew Susan Seidelman, but I did not know that they were part of this like No Wave film label. So I decided to make like more and more research. And I was very surprised because it was very, very difficult to find the films. And I moved to New York, and with my producers, we decided to track down like the films. And it was as well difficult to find them in the United States. So I think it was the starting point, like this. The starting point was it's very, very difficult, almost impossible to find the films made in New York, late 70s, mid 80s, with like on a shoestrings budget. So we're going to do like a documentary just to show how the scene was at that time. They really gave birth, to the independent film movement. And they really showed like an alternative of like the Hollywood, kind of movies. And I really like as well the spirit behind the films, just like do it yourself. If you just had this idea and just willing to do like something new or different, they just had this spirit who were like very, very like important for me. For example, like Jim Jarmusch, his first movies, early in the 80s was A Permanent Vacation, and then he did Strangers in Paradise, we got like some prize. But so yes, it's really like like the beginning of this independent film movement. I was very, very lucky and very persistent as well. Sometimes I was like I had to harass people. So John Waters at the beginning as well told me that he was not like completely part of the film. But I was just like kind of pushy. I was like, please, you really have to, because you were like a big influence for a lot of filmmakers. So of course, not of course, but he really helped us as well. So it was very interesting for me as well because it was my first movie and I was a complete outsider. I was not part of that scene. I'm like younger, I'm French with this accent, so it was really, really new because I didn't have any like connection at all. So, and I was surprised because people were like very, very willing to share with me like their stories. And it's like sometimes like a snowball, you have just like a few people at the beginning. The beginning I had an idea of like having like between 10 or 15 people, and basically at the end we finished to interview more than 40 people.
Anything you wanted to do or people you might meet, it all was possible.
Prior to that, there really wasn't a voice for independent film.
Destroy everything before 1976. It's over. It's incinerated. We kind of came out of the destruction.
It was part of that whole thing of getting the hell out of the art world and finding a kind of cinema closer to reality.
Just bought some film from the drugstore, put it in the camera, and started rolling.
They would literally call up to my window and we'd go down the block and shoot a scene.
Felt like we owned the city and we could shoot without permits, without restriction.
It was right at the peak of the debauchery of New York.
New York City was pretty much near bankruptcy, and it was like the Wild West.
I was going out every night, and wherever I would go, I had this 16mm camera, and I was shooting a lot of the bands.
Things were moving so fast then. It was like Television and Blondie and the Ramones, and then 2 months later that was over, and it was like nothing I'd ever heard before.
There really was this explosion, not only in film, but in music and theater and performance.
It was all about wanting to be very different from what mainstream movies and culture were.
I'm looking for the graffiti artist. We are all graffiti artists.
It was certainly darker. It was really reflecting the times.
No one was holding back. They were telling the ugly, naked truth as they felt it and as they lived it.
There were some things that we did in the films that I would never do now because I would be too paranoid that somebody would arrest me for it.
You haven't got film? Steal some film.
I was detained at the airport by the police because I had movies on me.
Our lives, I felt like our lives were movies. It was very cinematic.
I felt like at the end, maybe this is going to be some Warhol type thing, and one of these people is going to come up and shoot me.
It was like the best time, worst time of my life.
You ready to take my picture?